Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war, I guess, news update. It's an appendix to my hits and losses video because Andrew Perpetua brought out the hits and losses for 2 days just after I released my videos. So we have 2 days of losses. We'll go through them. We're going to start with this one, which is from his analysis from what was seen on the socials on the 10th of October. We're on the 12th now. So the first thing you'll notice is there's about a 3-to-1 loss ratio Russian to Ukrainian losses. But when you look at the combat asset losses, it's far more than that. So the combat asset losses go from the turquoise up here to the orange there. And for the Ukrainians, that's just that much there. So we have about a 4-to-1 loss ratio, maybe even 5-to-1. So that's a really good loss ratio for the Ukrainians there. The Russians losing quite a lot of kit. Okay, let's go through the Ukrainian losses for the 10th. And sadly, we have AN/TPQ 50s on there, but like I've said before, they're not the biggest counter battery radars. They're the things you often see on the back of Humvees. I do wonder whether these are on the back of vehicles and whether you see the vehicles listed as well as these. So these aren't like, it's not like a Patriot radar or anything like that. AN/TPQ 50, and there we go. So that's what I'm talking about. That kind of thing there, where you get that sort of radar on the top of a Humvee, something like that. They lost 3 of those. Okay, comms equipment, a few bits and pieces of that lost, an excavator, a couple of boats damaged, and then we're on to artillery, truck with a Zu-23-2, so that's more like an auto cannon. Is that really an air defense system? I don't know. Infantry fighting vehicle, a Bradley destroyed and a Bradley damaged, so that's going to be a little bit worrying. Captured M113, we've also got to capture Cougar 8. So the Russians capturing quite a few bits of the Ukrainian kit over the last month or two, and that would be mainly, I would have thought, because of what's going on in Kursk. When you've got dynamic maneuver warfare going on up there in a way that we haven't really seen elsewhere on the front line. The front line generally is very positional. So you have these static lines and you have one side, a bit like World War I, just flinging themselves at the other side. And when it's like that, it's very unlikely you get stuff captured because the enemy is charging at you in vehicles, you blow them up, or they run away, or they take over your position. And you're usually dug into trench lines or towns and whatnot, and you're not really using vehicles yourselves, and if you are, you're just getting them out. They are the things that you're using to get out dodge. When you've got maneuver warfare where it's quite dynamic, there aren't these structured fortifications and front lines, then you're pushing through here, you're pushing through there, you can come in behind people, and then you can come across a pocket of the enemy in a forest and they've got like a Humvee or something, then you can take that position, you take them prisoner and you capture the vehicle, or sometimes it's just left. We've seen a couple of bits of vehicles just left in woods in the Kursk area for whatever reason, don't quite know, and they're captured like that. So it's a lot more dynamic. Anyway, then the rest of the combat asset losses are basically what we generally see, Western provided vehicles or things like Cossacks made by the Ukrainians themselves. So, but not too much of it. Quite a few civilian vehicles, I guess. Most of them destroyed, or the majority destroyed. When we come up to the Russian losses, a number of trucks to throw in there, just over half of them destroyed. And likewise with civilian vehicles, so quite a few bits and pieces. But then far more, I guess it's the surveillance and comms stuff. The Ukrainians had 6 surveillance and comms bits of kit if you include the radars, and that's going to change the numbers a little bit. The Russians, a couple of bits of surveillance and comms, a couple of bits of artillery, D20. Some people lately have been saying that actually the Russians really are chomping through the old D20s and D30s at the moment. They're having a bit of an issue with stockpiles of older howitzers. There's a lot of shelling, although none noted today. There's only 2 artillery and it's not shelling, but it's been noted that there's more shelling on artillery, which means counter battery fire appears to be effective possibly at the moment. Right, for the tanks and the IFVs and the APCs, almost all destroyed, a couple abandoned, very few, just 2 damaged there out of all of that lot, out of what, 30, 40 bits of kit? Okay, artillery damage, but just 2 infantry fighting vehicles damaged, the rest completely destroyed, a couple of them abandoned. So really good stats for the Ukrainians there, good proportions. Range of the tanks, about 7 tanks, and then a good, so maybe 15 infantry fighting vehicles, BMP 1s, 2s, 3s, BTI T2s, and then a whole host of APCs, mainly MTLBs, a couple of other ones thrown in as well for good measure. So really good day for the Ukrainians in terms of the mass of equipment that the Russians have lost on the 10th. And that's what we see reflected in the general staff figures as well. The numbers of equipment, pieces of equipment they're losing. So good news for the Ukrainians then. But now we come to what must be the 11th of October. And actually, the numbers are a little bit different here. The Russians not really losing many combat asset losses in terms of combat assets, in terms of APCs and MRAPs and whatnot. A few tanks, mainly artillery, and the Ukrainians losing about the same amount of kit. But either side losing less than we have seen on previous days. As far as the general losses are concerned, it's about not quite 2-to-1, just under 2-to-1 ratio of losses, Russian to Ukrainian losses. So better for the Russians. Ukrainians losing quite a few bits of civilian equipment, likewise with the Russians, and a few ATVs. Actually, the Ukrainians are losing a couple of ATVs there as well. We have one bit of, for the Ukrainians, one bit of artillery, a tank, a couple of infantry fighting vehicles, 1 Bradley damaged, a number of M113s there, 4 on the list. That's quite a lot. Striker, Humvee, Max Pro, Cossacks, usual kind of Western equipment that we see. About half destroyed, half damaged there. And then when we come up, so nothing too crazy when we come up for the Russians, some surveillance and comms equipment, engineering vehicle, and then mainly it's artillery losses for their combat assets that have been lost. And actually, 3 BM-21 grads destroyed is a pretty high number, like 3 in one day. That's pretty good for the Ukrainians. We have seen a couple of days where the Russians have lost quite a few MLRS, as according to the general staff. So there's a reflection of that in these stats. And other pieces of artillery, NT-12 anti-tank guns, fairly old bits of kit, T-30 likewise, and so on and so forth. Tanks, 5 tanks, bit of a range. Well, I say range, actually 3 of them, we don't know what they are. Track gun and shed, T-80. And then, yeah, as mentioned, quite a few trucks, civilian vehicles, ATVs, 3 Desert Cross 1000-3, so they are the golf carts, and a couple of quads as well. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you because hopefully we'll have the next day's stats before tomorrow's hits and losses video. So anyway, something for you to get your teeth into and give you an understanding of who's losing what on a daily basis. I really like what Andrew does here with these stats, and I do find them useful for myself. So hopefully they are useful for you too. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.